Have you ever had a point in your life where you felt like you couldn't turn off the noise? It's the middle of the night and yet you're lying in bed awake. There's so many thoughts, voices, ideas, fears, anxieties going on in your head that it's impossible for you to quiet the noise, for you to be able to sleep. My friend, if that is you, or if that has been you, today is for you. Because today, our whole job is to help you quiet the noise. I'm in the studio today with Tommy Stoffel, a guy who knows exactly how you feel or how you have felt, where the noise inside your head is so loud, it's so chaotic that it ruins everything. And at one point in Tommy's story, it all comes to a head when everything falls apart. But at the same point, when everything is falling apart, everything's finally coming into view. And ironically for him, it came in the vision of a stoplight. From the green zone to the yellow zone to the red zone. That stoplight, that vision, it would change everything for Tommy. He would combine that with, ironically, off-roading. Yes, out in the woods with Jeeps, getting dirty, having fun. He learned by combining the two, well, he could quiet the noise. And if he could quiet the noise for himself, well, then he could quiet the noise for others as well. My hope with today's conversation is that it does more than entertain you. It does more than just give you another podcast to listen to. But I truly hope that it can help you, to empower you, and to give you hope that if the noise inside your head is too loud, then my friend, there is a way to quiet it. Now, if you want a little something extra to go along with today's interview, be sure to check out the link at the very top of today's show notes, where I created a custom song to go along with today's episode called Quiet the Noise. Again, click that link right at the top of today's show notes if you would love to explore this idea even further by way of a song. So listen to today's episode, enjoy it, get what you can from it. If you think of somebody who could benefit from hearing it, share today's episode with them. And then, hey, click the link at the top of the show notes, jump over to the soundtrack for our guest today. And at the end of the day, I just hope that one of these, the podcast, the song, something can help you. That's the whole point in this podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Lowe, and this, my friend, is episode 408 of Grit, Grace, and Inspiration.
Yeah, I got grit, grace, and inspiration on my mind.
What's going on? And welcome back to Grit, Grace, and Inspiration. I'm your host, Kevin Lowe, in the studio today with another awesome guest, a guy who I have been so excited to finally get to sit down and talk to. And that, of course, is Tommy Stoffel. Tommy, my man, welcome to the show.
Kevin, thank you so much. Very excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm excited for us to dive into your story, so many different assets of your story. And honestly, Tommy, where I would love for us to begin is kind of back in that point in your life, which I'm going to say is kind of probably the beginning of our conversation today, is when things, I would say, from what I know on the outside, looked great. Job, family, but maybe on the inside, things were kind of tearing apart. Would you take me back to kind of that part of your life, that chapter?
I will. Thanks for asking. So timing wise, it was about 20 years ago or so. And I was living life like all my friends. I had a good job, had a good partner in life. I had a house. I was actually living on a lavender farm. So I was doing okay. Money was there. The home was there. The relationship was there. But what was happening was I was, first drinking myself to sleep every night because I didn't know why at the time. It was just that that's what happened. I was, whatever gin and tonics turned into gin. And then by 11 o'clock every night, the brain would shut off and I would pass out. And then like clockwork at 3 o'clock every morning, the alarm clock would taunt me. And I would look over and see it. I would wake up and my head would go, oh shit, not again. And bam, my brain just clicked on and it just started I was a worrier. I was a great worrier. I would worry about everything. And so from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. when the alarm went off, my head was just running around with all these worries, these worry loops, this worry, this worry, this worry, that worry. Just the worries were endless. And that's the way I lived. And it was building pressure. And after about however many years of that, I hit a breaking point where my brain stopped thinking well. I wasn't making decisions anymore, clear-headed decisions. And I actually pulled a crazy stunt. I walked out of a party in the middle of a party on a Friday night. I just needed to escape. I didn't know where I was going. I walked in freezing cold temperatures without proper clothing. I was dressed, but I was dressed for a party in the house, not not cold temperatures. And I walked 15 miles in the middle of the night with a full moon to the nearest city where I lived by. Almost fell asleep in some guy's man cave because I was so exhausted. I went into some guy's garage actually, and I laid down or I sat in his chair and I almost fell asleep, and I might have not have woken up from that, but I got myself up and went to town. Anyhow, that next day, Saturday came, and I was hearing things. I was hearing voices, all this weird stuff was happening. And I finally made it back to the house that I, escaped from the night before. And I just walked into the house around 1:00 in the afternoon, and I just laid on the floor and I asked my wife, at the time I said, call 911. And she goes, what's wrong? And I go, my brain's not working. I just don't know what's going on. So the ambulance came, took me to the hospital where they admitted me, and I stayed for 2 weeks in the psych ward because I was coming in. I was highly manic. I was out of, my brain wasn't, like I said, wasn't making clear-headed decisions. And that was the beginning of it, the beginning of the end, or the end of the beginning.
Yeah.
What really happened was the next morning, I woke up in this hospital room.
Wow.
And it's clear in my head. It was a baby blue walls. And the night before, when I was put in there, I was somewhat coherent because they gave me a shot in the ass and it calmed my head down. and so I knew when I went to sleep the night before that there was a bed in the room with me, but the bed was empty. Well, when I woke up in the morning, there was somebody in the bed. And I looked over, and it was a young kid, maybe in his mid-30s. And he was strapped to his bed with the leather straps that you see in movies. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on here? And I looked under his wrist straps, and there were fresh bandages there. So sometime in the last 8 hours since I closed my eyes in the psych ward of our local hospital, this kid had tried to kill himself, and he didn't succeed, thankfully. And he was sleeping there in this bed next to me. And at that point, and excuse the expletive, but this is the way it came out of my head. I go, and I said this out loud, and I didn't say this out loud. I said this in my head. I go, what the fuck am I doing here? And I got an answer. Like, I don't know. It came from within. It was like powerful, and it was true. And it said, you are here to learn. This is your education. This is your opportunity to find out what goes on inside the minds of people that get them agitated, worried, stressed, overwhelmed, and to the point where they snap and lose it. Because that's what had happened to me. I'm like, okay, I'll take that challenge. I was already working on my spiritual path had already opened up a few years before. I was kind of gaining some insights into the human behaviors and psyche. And I'm like, okay, if this is the way I'm going to school, then I'll spend 2 weeks here in school and I'll see what's going on. And then I asked a second question, and this one really sealed the deal. I asked the universe, I said, what's the difference between me laying in this hospital bed and somebody that's free to walk on the street right now, somebody else that's walking on the sidewalk? And that's when this image kind of came up in my head. And I say it came up on the wall of the hospital, but it came up in my head. And there's a green box at the bottom of this image, and there's a yellow box stacked on top of that, and there's a red box stacked on top of that. And that I call the chatter chart or the stoplight chart now. But what that represents is the amount of noise in our head. Like, we have a baseline noise level in our head. And I was waking up at 3 a.m, and my chatter level was like high up in the yellow zone. I was near the overwhelmed location. And it didn't take much during a day to trip me into that red zone. And that red zone, I don't know if you've experienced it, but most times when I talk to people about this, they're like, oh yeah. You just kind of intuitively know what that feels like. And so that was a blessing for me, that insight to see this in a visual representation, a very simple visual representation of what was, I would say, wrong with me, what was going on inside of me, what was going on inside my head. I had too much chatter in there. I had too much noise in my head. And so I had already,
Wow.
yeah. So that's it. So now I walk around with this, this chatter chart, this stoplight chart, and that's the basis of everything I'm doing. For myself, I learned some techniques that reduce the chatter in my head pretty clearly. I live in this green zone right now, and I have been for the last 10 years or so, pretty steady state. And my purpose now is to help other people get out of that chatterhead, to get out of that monkey mind, whatever we call it, and to get out of the red zone and whittle down your yellow zone and make the green zone your home place, because that's where we're level headed, right? That's where we can think straight. That's where we have clarity. That's where we can pay attention to what's going on in the moment without a bunch of, head noise corrupting us. And so that's probably a good starting point to give you the intro.
Yeah, yeah. Now, out of curiosity, before this all started happening, before the 3 a.m. being up, with anxiety, worrying and stuff, had you ever had anything like this happen before in your life?
No, nope. And looking back on it, it built up over life, and I kind of hit this breaking point.
Okay.
But I didn't have any. No, I didn't have any sort of incidences like this prior to that.
Yes, yes. Okay. Now, my second question is, how long did it go on for you? The 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. worrying, the building kind of this boiling pot until that moment when you said that you left the party in the middle of the night. How long had that been about?
That was probably going on for about 4 years at that point. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So we're talking about a guy who had spent, 4 years is a long time to be living like that. So to say does this pot of boiling water with all of this or this building up in your head, yeah, you were at the breaking point.
I was. Yeah. And I wasn't living at that breaking point, right? Like in those 4 years, and even before that, in the stoplight chart, there's a scale going up from green to yellow to red. And at the bottom of the yellow zone, you get into the yellow zone, you get like agitated, right? And then you get worried, and then you get stressed, and then you get short tempered, and then you get overwhelmed. So it's kind of a buildup. So that buildup was happening over those 4 years and the time previous to that, right? My whole life, I can look back on it now, and I can see the initial trigger point when I was 12 years old that kind of set this whole ball in motion. And yeah, and I'll mention that too, because I think that's important. I think, not we all, but a lot of us have traumas, different things that happen in our lives. And some of them are, harsher than others. And as a 12-year-old boy, I was running around playing, having a good time. And one of my best friends was my dog, a Dalmatian named Schatzi, which means my love in German. And I came home from school one day, and my dad told me that Schatzi had been killed by a bus earlier, and he had already buried Schatzi over there in the rock garden. And at that point, this 12-year-old being shut down, didn't want to feel anymore, shut down his heart, and got really angry at God and my dad and love in general. And from that point, now I can look back on that. From that point forward, though, when I shut down my heart, I shut down my sensing, my energy sensing, my intuition. Think about that as a child. You can kind of understand things. You're sensitive to energy, and all that got shut off in an instant. And what happened then is I had to start thinking about things all the time, because I couldn't sense if a place was safe, right? I couldn't sense if somebody was telling me the truth anymore. And now I had to start thinking all those things. And that's when my brain started getting overworked. So I became at 12, I went from a laughing, fun, joyful boy to a kind of serious kid who, always had something to think about. And my brain started getting busier and busier. And that lasted 30 years until I hit the breaking point.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So going back to this amazing kind of revelation that you want to call it in the psych ward, this traffic light type image that you have. In that you talk about the chatter in our brain, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you've actually identified, is it like you call it 7 different flavors of chatter? Is that how you refer to it?
Yep. Yep. During that 4-year period where it was ramping up, I came across a teacher from India who was actually teaching about chakras, or 7 chakras, and how they get blocked. And they get blocked by different thought patterns, actually. So for me, I took that class. I took that class a couple of times. It was starting to help. And then I still had this, this breakdown, and maybe it was sparked because this class was opening up stuff in me, or different alternative options. And as I took that class in about the chakras, I understood it to be that this chatter in our brain is what locks up those chakras. So one of the examples, and I already mentioned it, one of the 7 flavors. So this is awesome news, by the way. So I'm going to back up just a step, right? We have these heads on our shoulders. They get full of chatter. Everybody has chatter. Everybody has some, but it's not all the noise in our head. It's not our thoughts. It's the negative stuff. It's the worrying. It's the self-defeating talk. It's the comparison with others. It's the kind of neediness or clinginess that we get to, or we get stuck in relationships with. There are 7 flavors of that, and I'll go through each of those real quick. But I'll start with the one that I was suffering the greatest from, and that was worry. Worry is one of the 7 flavors of chatter. And I learned how to reduce my worries. And just by looking at some logical stuff, like the teacher said, hey, do you know 99% of the stuff you worry about never happens? And I was like, oh, okay. so an engineer with a calculator, I'm like, okay, I can do the math on that one. And logically, you start thinking, okay, if I have a 1% chance of something happening, do I want to spend all my brain power and all of my energy worrying about stuff that's never going to happen? Or would I rather just stop worrying, which is one thing easy to say and a little more difficult to do, or just stop worrying, and then I have more brain space to handle that 1% issue when it happens, when it crops up, right? So very logical ways of looking at worry. Kevin, you haven't ever get in a worry loop, or know what I'm talking about if I say the word worry loop, where the brain gets in the same cycle.
Of course, yes.
Right? Worrying about the same thing over and over. And it may go on for hours at a time, right? Where the brain's looking for some ultimate solution, or it's the 10% that it hasn't figured out yet. Well, you're not going to figure it out yet because you're not meant to figure it out yet. But just that worry loop thing, once you realize that you have them, and everybody has them, I started paying attention to when they came up, and I'm like, okay, well, get off of it. Get off the worry. It's like a worry-go-round. Just get off the worry-go-round and think about something else. And so we were just bringing awareness and consciousness to these unconscious loops that we get in the habit of, we get trapped in. And so with that and a couple other examples, and the book that we'll talk about that I wrote has all this information in it. It also has exercises that a person can do to actually, reduce their worries. And I went to work on myself, and I reduced my worries. And now I wasn't near that red zone anymore, right? You took some pressure out. So now your baseline chatter level, the one I was waking up with every morning, was lower. Now I'm in the yellow zone. I'm not up at that red zone anymore. So think of these as a pyramid, and at the base of the pyramid is fear. So fear is like a big category, but fear is basically all 7 of these chatter sources are fears of different sorts, but fear itself is at the base. And so that's a big noisemaker in our heads, right? Fear of the unknown, fear of embarrassing ourselves, fear of whatever, right? Fear of spiders, all that is chatter. It's all noise in our head. And to distinguish fear from, I'm not walking around carelessly running out in front of vehicles. That's danger. There's fear. Fear is false evidence appearing real. Fear is head noise. Fear is our synapses firing in my brain. It's not real. It's not danger. It's not headlights. I'm not driving down the road and all of a sudden the headlights swerve into my lane. That's danger. and you want to have a clear head to be able to deal with that
Yes.
situation. But when these fears are running willy-nilly in our minds, and so many of us have them because they get planted there through so many ways, right? Media, TV, earthquakes, tornadoes, things that you're not in any danger of right now, but people, we get these fears built into our system. And to know that they're just thoughts and they're just electricity firing in our brain is, again, great news, because you can then reduce those. And again, the book has examples on how to do that and exercises. So that's the number one down at the root chakra level. And that blocks our root chakra. And our root chakra is where we kind of are supposed to like feel safe here on planet Earth. Like we're rooted to the earth, we're grounded, and we're safe. So that and an open root chakra is one that feels grounded and safe and secure. And these head noise, the fears, is what kind of blocks that root chakra from staying safe. So the second one has to do with our energy of feeling content, like we're okay, we're content in the world. And that doesn't mean that we don't want new things, or we don't want something else, or we don't want to go for an education. Content does not mean lazy. Content means, if you feel the real power of the word content, it's like right now, in this moment, I'm okay. I have what I need. And what messes that up are desires. And just that word desire, some people will go to sex right away, but that's not sexual desires. That's part of it, but it's also, the desire to have a perfect friend or a great mom or a good partner. And I'll start with relationships because that's an easy one to think about, but it's also stuff, right? Oh, I need more of this. I need more money. I need more of that. And society, again, is just a master at flooding our brains with things that we can desire and things that we want, right? And they'll even tell you that you might have some crazy disease, and then they'll make a desire or a need or a want for you to get some crazy medicine to fix some disease that you don't have. Right? So
Yes.
this is everywhere, right? Our society is just laced with fears and desires and worries. And so the desire stuff, think about this. Think about like a relationship that you want to improve in your life. And let's say it's a parental relationship. Like, I want to have a better relationship with my mother. So what our head does is it goes out and it makes a list of criteria, right? Well, I want us to have this kind of talk, and I want us to be this kind of friends, and I want her to behave this way, and I want her to treat me like that, and I want to be able to, right? And we have this list. We have lists of desires in our heads. Well, again, those lists become chatter. And where this wreaks havoc is that, those lists are always changing, right? You see some TV show and there's a really nice mother, son or daughter relationship. You're like, oh, I wish my mom and I had that. So you add that to your list of desires, right? So the desires are always changing. And now when you're in relationship with that person, you're judging and comparing. You're like, is she meeting these criteria? And I check, X, 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 check, X, 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 right? So that just creates even more noise and chatter in our heads, and maybe insecurities, and maybe, relational problems. So one of the big exercises that you'll see in the book is making lists, getting these random lists out of our heads and onto paper. And then I encourage people, usually without lighting fire to anything else, to burn the lists just to get it out and gone, right? And that then reduces your chatter. Now you're in the middle of the yellow zone, right? So each of these steps, you're getting closer and closer to green. Third one is worry. That blocks our chi center, our energy center, our power center, our courage. And if you feel that, right, or our self-confidence, you can feel like, when I was worried all the time, I was worried about everything so much that I really didn't have a lot of self-confidence. I didn't have a lot of inner strength, right? That was all getting weakened or buried underneath all these worries. So that's the third one. Fourth flavor is love and be loved. Now, this is the unconditional love of just being in, just the love you feel for a dog, the love you feel for a tree. And honestly, it'd be nice if our relationships had that element of love in it. But all too often, we get into feeling like we need somebody to love us. We need to feel approval. We need to feel it to get somebody's attention. And that need for attention and that need for approval, again, becomes a source of chatter. Like, oh, am I worthy of this? Oh, I don't have this. Oh, I'll never find, true love. Well, all that is head noise, right? And we all have that in different flavors too. So that's the fourth chakra blocker of that kind of that neediness, and that can turn into clinginess and really not clean energy dynamics between two people. So that's the fourth flavor, and that messes up that real energy of the love, that universal love that kind of can flow through us when we get our head noise under control.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, so before you continue, so let me be sure that my mind is right. So when we're talking about these different flavors, these chakras, so am I gathering that these are things that we ultimately are realizing we want to try to clear from our mind?
The idea is that this chatter is not helpful. And thanks for saying this too. If you think about the whole stoplight chart, the green, yellow, red, as it goes up in chatter, our life also goes up in stress, right?
Yes.
So this then becomes a physical condition of stress. Now, the stress in our mind creates stress in our bodies, tension, muscle tension. And we know that it reduces our immune system. Stress does. We know that it, can make us sick.
Yep.
Through stress. So thank you for bringing that in. And that is one of the key motivators for reducing the chatter in our head. One, to have clarity.
Yeah.
And two, to have less stress. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. All right, cool. You may continue. I just had to be sure. I'm like, wait, I got to be sure I'm on the right path here. So
and
good.
Thank you for calling it out. That's we call it the chatter chart. We call it the stress chart. So they go hand in hand. The amount of noise in our head, this in our head equals the amount of stress we have in our life. And we know a lot of us are walking around pretty uptight. So as I was, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yes. The fifth one is very interesting. So the fifth one is our unique self when we're in our power. It's our authentic self. It's the gift that we have, that we brought here, or that we come to planet Earth with, or that we're in this life with. And that gets locked up. This one's very interesting. That one gets blocked up by all this comparison that we do. So you think back in life, right? I'm smarter than, I'm getting grades that are worse than or better than somebody else. I'm smarter than somebody, dumber than somebody. I'm taller than, shorter than, prettier than, uglier than this, right? And we all do this. This is, again, part of our society here on Earth. Loves to compare ourselves to, other things in other ways. And if you just feel that comparison under the surface of that, if we're comparing ourselves to somebody else, we're liking ourselves less in each of those situations. Or maybe we like ourselves more. Maybe we're like, I'm, king of the mountain. I've got, all the money in the world. I'm the best of this and the best of that. And well, that's a runaway ego, which we'll talk about at number 6. But but most of us get into the comparison.
Yes.
And that's our self-critic, right? And that's our self not loving ourselves. There's a part of ourselves that we don't like, that we think could be better or should be different. And so this one is pretty gnarly. And so again, there's exercises and the readings in the book. There's lessons in the book that can help a person untangle those comparisons that we get stuck in. Those comparisons also lead to other things like envy, or trying to keep up with the Joneses, or which mixes in with desires. And so these 7 flavors, if you look under the surface a little bit, they just wreak havoc on our lives in addition to causing stress. They're just mindsets they're not healthy for us, not healthy for our self-love. And then if we're not healthy in our own self-love, then we're really hard to be healthy in our relationships with others too. So that 5th one's pretty powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The 6th one I just alluded to, that's kind of this thinking mind that, that thinks it's separate. that hasn't realized yet that it's part of the universal energy of this loving energy, this one love energy. And it's all this chatter built up together, and it's our identity, like I'm a worrier, and I've got a job, and I own a lavender farm, and I'm driving myself crazy, and and I drink myself to sleep every night. That's that was my ego. That was my ego mind. That's what blocks our intuition center, or some people call it the third eye, is our ability to see the energy of things or sense the energy of the world and deal with the world in an energetic perspective, as opposed to I am an individual over here who has all these fears and all this stuff, all these desires and all these things I have to protect, and I have to worry about it. And I'm in some weird relationships, and I'm always comparing myself to everybody else. And I need to build a wall to keep you on your side of the fence, right? I need to build a wall between Mexico and the United States to keep you out. I need to, right? That's where this number 6 lockup comes to it. It's like all that built up together, and now you feel like you have to protect yourself. Like you're scared of people can get scared of the whole world, right? And their ego mind has to like make a job for itself and save you from all these worries and all these fears, and it's actually, its job is not really needed. So this idea actually has come to me since you and I talked the first time.
Okay.
Because what I just said there about this number 6 energy, our ego, is like, then people can get like, oh, the chatter is my ego, and I've got to kill my ego, or and people, the old spiritual stuff would be like, you got to eliminate your ego. And what I'm doing instead is I'm talking to my ego from my inner sage perspective, because that's my intuition now, from my kind of my third eye perspective, the part of myself that knows that I'm a spiritual being, that I'm an energy being in this body. That's my inner sage. That's my intuition. Now I can kind of talk to my ego, because the inner sage is in control of this being now. That's the title of the book, is Take the Wheel. And the intention there is for your inner sage, your higher self, to actually take the driver's seat and take back the steering wheel of life. And now I can look at my ego and say, okay, ego, I'm not eliminating you. You're not a threat. You're not, your job isn't at risk. But look, you don't have to be so fearful. We don't need to go into the fear world anymore. So that part of your job you can let go of. It's heavy anyhow, and it's not good for either of us. So just let's work on reducing fears. And we do that for all 7 of them. You know what, ego, you don't have to worry so much anymore. Life's okay. We're not in any danger. We're doing all right. Let's lay off the worry a little bit, and we'll do some exercises, and we'll get that down. So it's almost like I'm retraining my brain. I've retrained my mind, my thinking mind, my ego mind, to not have the fears and the desires and the worries and the need and the constant comparison. And so that ego mind then that blocks my third eye, my intuition, my higher self, my inner sage, it has plenty of stuff to do. Like my ego mind is talking to you right now. But it's not talking through fear and worry and anxiety anymore. So it still has a job. I used to talk about, like, if you think of your being as an aircraft, there's 2 seats in the front where they fly the plane from, in the cockpit. There's a pilot seat and there's a co-pilot seat. Somewhere along the way in human history, the co-pilot, which is our ego mind, bonked the pilot over the head, which is our inner sage, gagged it, bound it, and threw it in the back of the plane, and is doing everything all by itself. 7 days a week, 24/7, doesn't need any sleep or coffee. Let me keep going. And that's high stress, uptight, full of worries, fears, anxieties, all this stuff. That's the way the ego mind somehow forms in our beings and and tries to fly this or drive this, whatever this craft is that this body and mind that we're living in. So that metaphor helps me kind of.
Yes. Wow. I love that.
Helps the pilot get back in the pilot seat, right? And the co-pilot still has a job, but it's not doing everything.
Yes. I love the metaphor.
And the seventh one is, they call it the crown chakra. And that's our connection to the universe. That's our connection to source. That's our connection to divine energy, whatever the one love, whatever that feeling that we get into sometimes when we're peaceful, we're quiet, we're meditating, we're walking through trees, we're walking in a forest, right? Or we're just sitting by ourselves and with nothing else going on, and we get drop into that peaceful green zone. This is a green zone experience. That's that energy. That's that energy that we live in. But all the chatter from these six other chatter makers block us from kind of being in that sometimes. So, right. So now we'll go back to this stoplight chart. Being in this green zone is a nice way to live. You don't have a head full of noise. Your body mind complex is working in a nice way. You're kind of energetically not on guard all the time. There's no hypervigilance. There's no amygdala firing. You're just walking and living life in this body the way I think it was meant to be walked in and lived in. That final seventh, like, connection to source is, if everything else is yellow or red, if your fears and desires and worries and needs and comparisons and this ego is all like in full control and in yellow or red zone in this uptight high stress mode, then overall we kind of have a sense of lack, or a sense of it's always rains on my parade, or nothing ever goes my way, and then we're always complaining or blaming, pointing fingers at something else. So there's those thought patterns that block our connection to the infinite source of love and energy that we're actually plugged into. So
Yeah.
pretty lengthy 7-flavor description.
Yeah, but I mean, I appreciate you taking the time to walk us through it and explain it all, because I mean, that's where it all starts to make so much sense and gives context to exactly what you're talking about. But the question, Tommy, that I keep kind of thinking in my head is, I mean, the wisdom that you have to share today, I mean, it's like you have this wisdom inside of you, but I can't help but think, like, why did you have to go to that lowest point of leaving a party in the middle of the night, walking through the cold, end up having to be committed to reach this pinnacle of finally realizing and seeing the stoplight signal and all of this starting to click together? Do you feel like you have a reason for it?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. The word that comes up is relatability. And I don't feel, especially in topics such as this, which deals so much interpersonal, right? This is inside. This is your insides. This is your life, the way you think about life and feel about life. And I'll say a teacher can walk around with this new information and say, hey, everybody, I haven't experienced any of this pain and suffering side of this stuff, but look, you can be, in a beautiful, loving relationship if you just let go of your, need for attachment. So I think it's relatability. And Eckhart Tolle said it to us once. I was sitting with him, a bunch of other people, and somebody asked him how his expression of the power of now came out and became so popular. And he said, the reach of this, the experience of this, and the reach of this, in a healing mode was only as big as the depth and the darkness that I went through to find it. So,
yeah.
And that resonates too. Like, there's somebody suffering out there in the red zone. You can't just be living a whole green zone life and tell them, what to do. You have to say, okay, yeah, I've been there. I know what that feels like, and here's what I did about it. Another metaphor that, this pit of despair that we get into, the red zone, where, that's where depression sits. That's where suicidal tendencies sit. In that red zone. This is where, severe PTSD is. And you can't just tell somebody to snap out of it, obviously. But I found for myself, so let's go to a visual that somebody's down in the bottom of a pit, and the pit's 20, 30 feet deep in the middle of a road, and they're down there and they're stuck and they can't climb out. Well, I've been in that pit, and here's what I did. And I'll throw down some wood, and I'll throw down a saw, and I'll throw down some rope, and I'll give them instructions on how to build their own ladder, right? But the rope and the wood and the saw is what I use. Those are the tools I use to get out. And if they help somebody else, then then, the tools with the instructions on how to do it yourself. That's what this is about. So again, relatability and experience in that darkness, in that red zone, and coming out of it. That's, I feel, why we have to suffer the depths of
Yeah.
suffering in order to help other people out of similar depths of suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree completely. Yeah. So Tommy, my next question is, in my opinion, people are going to be like, say what? Like, what interview did we just skip to? Because I don't understand how it's even going to connect. But all of a sudden, there's a part of your story that includes us off-roading. Would you like to connect the dots?
I will absolutely connect the dots. So off-roading, jeeping, driving over big rocks and up and down steep hills in cool vehicles at 3 or 4 miles per hour. What does that do for you?
Yes, exactly.
Let's go back to yellow zone, red zone mentality, and something that a lot of people talk about, PTSD, right? We all have some degrees of PTSD. Some of us have it much worse than others. First responders, war veterans, all that. That red zone behavior, that we're using a part of our brain, the reptilian mind, right? People talk about the reptilian mind or the amygdala. When we get into a heightened state of vigilance because something happened to us, where we're always looking over our backs, we're always on guard, we're always tense, we're always nervous, we're always like worried about something happening to us. That is using our amygdala mind, and that's where it's firing. And so that is not a healthy place to be operating our brain from. And what the jeeping does is it takes us away from our life where we have these stresses, where we have this, this penchant to be worried about the future or reliving some past event, right? So now we're out of time. We're in the future or the past. When we're jeeping, when we're driving this vehicle, when our hands are on the wheel and our feet are on the floor and our ass is in the seat, we're really present, being mindful and almost meditating and driving over rocks. Now we're using the prefrontal cortex. Now we're using the front part of our brain that is supposed to be paying attention to the world, paying attention to the moment. This is the power of now. This is where we are. And so the jeeping gives you a visceral green zone experience. It gives you several hours at a time of being out of the hypertension or hypervigilant monkey mind and being just present, focusing on the rocks, focusing on the dirt, focusing on the nature you're driving through, the sounds the vehicle's making, the feelings of it bouncing around. It just absorbs all of your senses in this moment right now. And it doesn't have to be jeeping. It doesn't have to be off-roading. People have their own ways, right? Everybody has something they kind of really enjoy doing that brings them into the moment, that helps them focus their attention and stay in that green zone. This is just one way of kind of doing it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's amazing. Now, would you mind, just to give more context to this whole aspect, do you have any stories that you could share? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but you take groups out to do this experience to help them, maybe, I don't know, maybe first responders or anybody, helping them to move from the one zone to the next. Do you have any kind of experiences that you could share with us?
I do, thanks. Some years back, I started buying more Jeeps than the one I had because I wanted to, and at the time I was thinking, I'll take this to corporate events. We'll get C-level people out of their high stress, high tension mode for a day and have them lower their chatter score, in a day, where if they're up near the top of the yellow zone, they'll come out of that day, lower in the yellow zone, and they'll know it and will experience it, and then they'll be motivated to do more and get more stuff out of their head. So we did a pilot project back in 2020 with the LAPD. One of my Jeepers, Zen Jeepers, we call it, he'd been coming for a while and he was really getting the benefits from it. He brought 5 of his uptight, hypervigilant LAPD officers. We had 5 Jeeps for them and we put them in the Jeeps for 6 hours. In the morning when we took pictures of these kids, he said, "Hey, smile next to your Jeep." You know how somebody really tries to force a smile? It's like you can tell that they're so uptight and so tense because they're living in hypervigilance. They're living in total alertness, like they're on guard all the time. You can imagine a cop, right? And now you can imagine a cop in LA. And now we got 5 of them ready to Jeep for a day. And I tell you what, 8 hours later, we're in a restaurant together after a day of Jeeping, and they were kids again. They were relaxed.
Mm.
They were slapping each other on the back. They were smiling for real because they had gotten out of that hypervigilant mode and they had experienced life being aware of your surroundings, aware in the moment. And somehow something switched in them that day to switch out of alert, hypervigilant, tense mode into relaxed awareness.
Mm.
And my buddy, the lieutenant, said they haven't really gone back to that level of tension since. And this is 5 years ago now.
Wow.
So just a day of this can really.
Wow.
Yeah. And I don't want people to think that they have to come Jeeping.
Yeah.
They have to find their own green zone experience and immerse themselves in it. I also saw a guy cure himself of ADHD, adult ADHD, because his mind was distracted. The monkey mind was distracted by so many things. And we Jeeped together. He did it for 2 years. And one day I looked at him, I go, man, you're different. He goes, yeah. He goes, the rocks are my therapy. He goes, when my mind's on the rocks, it's nowhere else. So having and creating or finding, practicing your own green zone experience is the key to success here. In addition to going through the book and doing these exercises to get some of that chatter out of the way so you don't creep back up into the yellow zone or red zone. That's like the 1-2 punch.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we're going to get to the book in one moment, but before I ask you about the book specifically, do you have any other examples of green zone activities for somebody who's maybe thinking, well, what could I do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people go to like more physical things like rock climbing or mountain biking. But honestly, my grandma used to crochet quilts for us. And there was stories about some of the big football players crocheting some years ago, right? It's any activity that just takes your attention. All your attention is focused on that activity enough so that you're not thinking about, the chatter. The chatters, there's no space for the chatter. So you're just giving yourself a breather from the chatter. I was at an event last weekend, 2 weekends ago, and there was an artist there, a gentleman by the name of Christian. And Christian offered us a little art class. And so he sat with us and he had us start to doodle on our page. And he started helping us doodle and then turn this doodle into patterns and then connecting and then coloring in some of the squares and stuff like that and boxes. And just that was a very mindful, calming, present green zone experience. So we just need to find them. And just once you put this out to the universe, like ask the universe to help you find your green zone experience. And ask like that to the universe will get you answers. People will show up in your life and give you examples. You'll pick up a couple. Do you have something that you do that calms your head, that gets you into this kind of green zone space, that breath work, meditation, grounding exercises? Is there something that you do?
I don't have anything in particular that I can think of other than moments of just prayer in the morning, first thing in the morning, with a cup of coffee when I say the rest of the world is still asleep.
Yep.
And you can just kind of sit there in the quiet. I always say the morning with the first cup of coffee is my favorite part of the day because the rest of the world is still asleep. And if you don't immediately turn on the phone listening to something, but actually just sitting in the quiet, in the still, and that is where it is for me. And then the second thing, honestly, and I know it sounds cheesy, but it's getting fully in depth into the interviews that I do here on the podcast.
Yep.
I'm sitting in a little recording studio where it used to be a walk-in closet, converted that to a studio. I'm in here with headphones on, the door shut, just totally keyed in on my guest and again, eliminating all the chatter and just being focused in on this conversation.
There you go. Right. Prayer in the quiet time is a green zone activity. Being present, so fully present and quiet in your head during interviews. So you're listening, listening is what you're doing a lot of. That's a very present moment activity where your head's not, I think, ahead of what to ask next, right? but you're just in this moment, listening, paying attention. It's paying attention to the moment. That's what I do. And I take people out. And Saturday, we're taking a bunch of people out.
Yes.
I teach them how to pay attention, really, and pay
Yes.
attention to the
Yes.
moment.
But what I want to say though is, let's just be honest, totally lame compared to Jeeping. I mean, I would much rather get to just come out to California and get to ride in a Jeep because, I mean, whoo, baby, that is my kind of stuff. I mean, you're talking to a guy who, before I went blind, grew up on the back of a dirt bike and four-wheelers. So, yes.
You know you have the invitation, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in the Jeep. And we'll do that sometime together for sure.
Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Tommy, so talk to me about the book that we've been referencing. I'm curious to know how the book even came about, and then, of course, what the book can do for somebody who wants to take our conversation to the next level.
Right. So really, you go back to the stoplight chart: green zone, yellow zone, red zone. The book is all about that. Each of us, has like kind of a baseline chatter level. So on our website, offroadmonks.com, because the book is written by two of us and we're both off-roaders, and we got nicknamed Off-Road Monks when somebody made a documentary about us. That if you look at offroadmonks.com, there's a stress survey out there, and you can take a 10-question quiz, and it'll tell you where you are on that chatter chart, first off. So, and then the book does that. It's like, okay, where are you? Are you in the yellow zone? Are you in the green zone? Are you in the red zone? Do you want to improve or reduce your chatter? The first half of the book then talks about being in the moment and how important that is, paying attention, and how we get pulled out of paying attention by distractions, by the chatter in our head, by, worrying about the future or worrying about the past. So it really is like a bit of a look into the power of now. And that's the first half of the book. And so if you're already like a pretty good, practitioner of meditation, or you have some present moment practices like we just talked about, first half of the book will just be a different way of looking at that. The second half of the book is the 7 flavors and how to reduce the chatter in each one of those, and the benefit you get for each of those 7 areas when you reduce the chatter. So that's what's in the book. My writing partner, Brian, is gifted in his writing skills. He's like talking to your soul. It's like a soulmate talking to your soul. We call it soul talking. And that's the way the book is written. So it's talking to your inner sage, it's talking to your wisdom, it's talking to your higher self and saying, hey, you want to, get back in control of this being. You want to get back in the pilot seat. Here's what you do to kind of retrain or help your ego mind lessen its load, lessen its burden, not have to do all this heavy lifting on worries and fears and stuff like that. And so that's the second half of the book. And together, it's a kind of a do-it-yourself self-help book for getting out of the yellow and red zone and being in more of a present moment, peaceful, in the quiet zone of life.
Yeah, I love it. Now, remind me the name of your book and the best place to find it.
So the book is called Take the Wheel. So that's, what we're doing when we're jeeping out there is it's your inner sage taking the wheel, taking back control of your life. Get back in the driver's seat of life is part of the subtitle. Yeah, and you can find it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, where we have an audio version coming out probably in another week or two. We recorded an audio version, so that'll be hitting the stands soon. Yeah, it's out there where books are found.
Yeah, well, fantastic. Well, I will be positive that all the links are in the show notes for anybody interested in learning more about getting in touch. Now, is it through the website, the offroadmonks.com? Is that where, if somebody is in the California area or interested in the off-roading, is that where they can learn more about that as well?
That is in there too. Zen off-roading, soul coaching, or pages on the site. Yep, you can find all that. You'll see some cool pictures of some of us jeeping and some of the things we do. The book and ways of buying it's in there. That stress survey is in there, so you can see where you are on the chatter chart, along with our kind of mission statement of helping people have these green zone experiences.
Yeah. Well, Tommy, man, been such a pleasure to get to talk with you today. I really appreciate you being willing to share your personal story and just these unimaginable, just insights that you have gained and that you've been able to share and to help so many people. I think it's a really powerful story, and it's a real honor to get to have you on the podcast. So truly, thank you so much for being here.
Well, Kevin, I thank you too. I mean, the title of your podcast, everything about it, ever since I first heard of you, I'm like, this is a man doing the work, helping people, doing what I'm doing, helping people get out of that, that stressful part of life, and all the stories that you bring, and some of the podcasts I've listened to of yours are all like in the same vein of helping us help ourselves, of helping us heal from these traumas that we have, or the suffering that we have in our head. And so thank you too for being a fellow warrior of sorts, of helping people.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, man. That means a lot to me. For you listening today, if you're still with us, well, first and foremost, that means that you are interested enough that you have no choice but to go down and check out today's show notes, where you can grab the links, access the book, get all the resources that have been mentioned. Please be sure to not let this end here. And of course, my friend, whether it's you or maybe there's somebody in your life, a family member, a close friend, somebody who you think that they could really benefit from hearing today's conversation, well, please be sure to share today's episode with them, because I know it would mean the world to them, it'd mean the world to me. And you know what? If we can all just focus on helping out just one person, then I believe we stand a chance at making this world a better place. Until next time, I'm your host, Kevin Lowe. And of course, this was another episode of Grit, Grace, and Inspiration.